Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the KZ ASF. This is KZ's 5BA in each ear set. This is the younger, smaller brother to the ASX, which is 10 per ear. And so it's a slightly different design, very similar, but still, quite a big piece of plastic. And you can see the guide back there. There's some fancy writing that says ASF full upgrade, and if you squint behind there, there's a crossover board. So this is kind of the black on black faceplate with the smoke black shell. These are ASLA Sedna ear fit tips, not the standard tips. I found those work well. And so yeah, overall kind of a nice set. I think the silver blue might look just as striking, but black on black is quite nice. So I do want to thank the AK Audio Store for sending this one out to me. If you look on there today, it's $60. If you wait on Black Friday, it'll be $57.43. So just a reminder to check those Black Friday sales next week, as I'll be talking about those at some point next week as well. So here is the ASF, and if you've been reading on HeadFi or other places, you know these are a very polarizing set, and half the people absolutely hated them, and half the people didn't necessarily absolutely love them, but definitely didn't feel it deserved any of the harsh criticism that it's been receiving lately. So I will at least talk about my experience, and there's just no one's really put their finger on why it's so polarizing or why half the people think it's, sounds absolutely horrible, and half the people think, they just don't get it. So I will at least talk about my experience with it. So out of the box, I 100% agree with some of those horrible reviews. It's bassy with this early treble roll-off. It's not detailed. It's muffled. But the vocals sound pretty good, which is the odd part. So all those bad reviews, I absolutely get it. I heard it just out of the box. You plug it into your phone. That's what it sounds like. And the question is, how do you go from this very dark sound to this sound that people seem to really like? And, I don't think it's the same sound. So for me, I sort of ended up playing with volume, tips, cable, and power. And this is the Qudelix 5K. And, my general thought is that it really needs an amp, and I don't think a USB dongle is going to work. Your phone isn't going to work. This one actually needs some power. And when I was playing with it originally, I just noticed that the more volume you get, it sounds a little better and better each notch on the volume. But at some point you're at like 80-85% volume, and you sort of realize, well, it's not necessarily only a volume thing, it's going to be a power thing. So I do believe that you need an amp for this one, even if it's a small one like this, but I would not recommend buying it if you just have a phone. I think you're going to be kind of stuck in the dark ages. So tips, these are the ASLA Sedna tips, and I sort of like these because of the bass control. It's a bassy sound, just like the SAOH, just like the ASX. It's got tons of bass. You don't need tips that emphasize the bass, and this is a silver cable, which sort of brings out the other frequencies other than the bass, and for the same reason. It's got plenty of it, no need to emphasize it. And if anything, these do add a little more control to it, so that's why I use those tips. So the sound, kind of a warm, balanced, and like I said, it still leans a little bassy at times, but for the most part, quite balanced and detailed. It's this shallow V. It's kind of like the ZAX V shape. I think it's still V shape, but it's not crazy. Kind of conservative. And what you notice about when you put this thing through an app, it's just very capable across all of your playlists. I don't really care what genre you're talking about. It's just almost like a playlist killer. It's like no matter what you throw at it, you just want to hear what it sounds like on ASF. And that's kind of where I got to. And that's the strangest thing is like half the people absolutely hate it. And then I kind of got to the point where I just wanted to hear everything over again on the ASF because it's kind of a unique sound. It's just all BA sound with this nice bass as well. So it's not something I get to hear often. So I was intrigued by it. So, and I think at least half the other people are as well. So The bass, like I said, tips add some control. A bit less would be even better, and it'd be more natural sound if it was a little bit less as well. But not too bad compared to the SA08, where you really can't play with the tips all that much. Definitely some bigger open tips that can tone a little more control to the bass is kind of where you want to be at. But it still hits quite hard. That mid bass really hits you quite hard, just like the SA08, and it still bleeds a bit into the mids to add warmth and body. And just like the SA08, that sound is the sound across the ASF is quite warm. It's not this lean, BA, analytical, cold sound at all. It's kind of a KZ version of a BA sound, which is quite warm and bassy. So I will call out Sam Smith's Another One, and if you listen to right in the beginning on the ASF, his voice goes really low, and there's a keyboard that hits really low, and the two sort of collide at that low point right in the beginning of the song. And that's kind of where you kind of think to yourself, if there was just a little bit less bass, his voice would be more differentiated, there'd be more space between the two, there'd be a little more texture between the two. And that's why I say it's just kind of a hair over the line of too much. And right in the beginning of that song, you feel it. But then as the song goes on and his voice gets a little higher and it separates out, it sounds great. And his voice pops and all that stuff. But, I just kind of wanted to point out that very beginning part is just an idea of kind of how over the line the ASF is. It's really not that much, but just a small, tip change can actually make a nice difference right there. So the mids, even without the amp, the vocals stand out. And I think you'll see that even in some of the horrible reviews. It's sort of the highlight of the bad version of the ASF, the mids, the vocals. But when you put an amp into it, it very much breathes life into everything. These things really start to sing compared to this drab, lifeless version that you get without the amp. So on top of that, the details pop. And I had this problem with the SA08. It just doesn't make sense why you have 4 BAs in that case, 5 BAs in this. Why doesn't it sound really detailed? And I think you just really need an amp for those details to pop, and they definitely pop out as I listen to it now. So it's not quite as relaxed as the SA08, and I think part of it is this amp version of it is just a little bit sharper, and it's just like the ZAX. It's got this very small hint of aggression to it, an edge, a sharpness to it that makes some of the details pop out. And so a lot of this, the more I listened to it amp, the more I thought it was resembling the ZAX as opposed to the SA08, which is somewhere between the unamped and the amp version of it. It's just more relaxed, a little slower, not as many details. And I think part of it is, I think if they had just boosted the power, you probably would have been closer to this guy. But instead they left it for longer battery life and, just a trade-off that they did. So in retrospect, it all makes sense. But as I was doing the SA08, it didn't really make all that much sense. So like I said, compared to the SA08, this one feels a little faster, a little tighter, a little less congested with the amping, which is really nice, which was one of my complaints on the SA08. And then this new song, the Tones and I, Fly Away. I think if you're going to pick songs that stand out on the ASF, it's going to be kind of a strong vocal. And for me, her tone is kind of unique, and it's kind of dynamic within a small range. And it just pops out on the ASF. And I think, you could pick any strong vocal, but that one, just a new one, stands out to me. I liked it on this one. So the treble, so this early roll-off, sort of goes away, but the level is still, I would call it conservative and controlled. It's not, it doesn't soar as high as I would really want to, but I think I said the same thing about the ZAX. It's, it's a kind of a conservative tuning, and it doesn't offend anyone, which I think is a good thing. And I think the ASF does something kind of similar. So is it too controlled? Yeah, probably not. Do I wish the level was just a little bit higher? I do. But compared to where it was at the Dark Ages, a song like Happy by Pharrell Williams, a lot of these vocals in the Dark Ages originally, you were missing the whole top end of some of these higher voices, these higher frequency sounds. And so when I played that song, you sort of realize that it's actually all there now, and it sounds really, really good. So not necessarily, the best treble song, but as far as one song that kind of wrapped up, here's everything that I really liked about this, and it's all working together the way it should. That song kind of popped out to me, and I haven't heard it in a couple of years, and it just sounded kind of amazing on the ASF, so there it is. So the technicals, a lot of what I said on the SA08 still applies. Not as much, though, so it's still just a little bit too much bass for some people. When you're looking for a very technical BA, it's not. It's just like a warm, musical, more fun sound as opposed to a technical sound. So some people are going to like that, some people will not. But, it still affects the clarity and the transparency, and it's really hard to achieve that real realism in a voice or an instrument without having those two shine through. And on this one, it's just kind of a bassier sound as opposed to a transparent, super clarity sound. So I'll kind of say that'll be an issue that some people will point out. But what you get in return is that warmth and body that makes you forget it's an actual BA. And when you're kind of listening to it after a while, you just absolutely forget that it's 5 BAs and there's no DD in there at all. It's just a nice, pleasant, warm, musical sound. So the details and the resolution don't push the realism, and that's sort of where I think the CA16 and even the ZAX kind of shine through, where you really got a sense of nice resolution and detail, and things just had this real sound to them. So in this guy, pretty close, but not quite to ZAX or CA16 levels, but close enough. And I said the vocals just stand out. And I don't know, it'd be a toss-up. I think I might actually prefer the vocals because they're a little closer on the ASF. They definitely pop them forward a little bit. So the staging on this guy is better than the SA08, and I think that's just straight up from amping it. It's just a little wider, less congested, and you get some height. And it's not super wide. I think I would call it naturally wide. It's sort of beyond your ears, but not crazy wide. And so originally when I did my notes, I said I wish there was more air and more presence, more like the ZAX. And I don't know if that's actually true. I think it's pretty close. I still like the ZAX probably a tad better, but this one was kind of growing on me. And I think if I spent more time with it, it'd be a toss-up. But yeah, I think the more I use it and the more it breaks in, I think it's kind of there. So that's it. That's kind of my review of the ASF. And like I said, I just wouldn't go here without some kind of amp. I wouldn't necessarily bother with your phone. If that's all you have, then I would wait for something else. But hard to say. No one's really pointed their finger at that, but that's just my opinion, what I went through to get it to the point where I thought it sounded really, really good. And I would hate for anyone to buy it, plug it into their phone, and end up, with this early roll-off dark sound. That's just not going to make anyone happy, including me. So again, thank you guys for watching and tuning in, and I'll see you next time.